Okay, so with Malachi 3 and 8, will a man rob God? Yet ye have robbed me, but ye say, wherein have we robbed thee? In tithes and offering. Tithe comes from the Hebrew word ma'aser. Ma'aser is the Hebrew word for tithe, and it means a tenth part. A tenth part. Payment of a tenth part. Tithing was based on a 7-year agricultural cycle, a 7-year agricultural cycle called the Shemitah cycle. Leviticus 25, beginning at verse 1, it says, And the Lord spake unto Moses in Mount Sinai, saying, so where were they? They were in Mount Sinai. Mount Sinai was before they went into the promised land. Okay? Verse 2, he says, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, When ye come into the land which I give you, then shall the land keep a Sabbath unto the Lord. So it's saying that right now they're outside the promised land, okay? And Moses is giving this instructions for when you go into the land. You see? So it's saying that when ye come into the land which I give you, then shall the land keep a Sabbath unto the Lord. Verse 3 says, 6 years shall thou sow thy field, 6 years shall thou sow thy field, and 6 years shall thou prune thy vineyard, and gather in the fruit thereof. Verse 4, But in the 7th year shall be a Sabbath of rest unto the land, a Sabbath for the Lord. Who is the Sabbath for? For the Lord. Okay? Thou shalt neither sow thy field, nor prune thy vineyard. And the Sabbath of the land shall be meat for you, for thee, and for thy servant, and for thy maid, for thy hired servant, and for thy stranger that sojourneth with thee. And for thy cattle and for the beasts that are in the land shall all the increase thereof be meat. Be what?
Meat.
Meat. M-E-A-T. Okay, we're talking about food here. All right. This was under the law of Moses. Okay, so now let's talk about the law of Moses and its purpose. Talking about what is the law of Moses and its purpose. Deuteronomy 12. Deuteronomy 12. Verse 1 tells us that these are statutes and judgments which ye shall observe to do in the land, which the Lord God of thy fathers giveth thee to possess it, all the days that ye live upon the earth. All the days that ye live upon the earth. So the law of Moses, let me explain what they are. Okay, we see that they are statutes and judgments. But the law of Moses are 611, if you want to be technical, it's 613 laws that were for the promised land. There were 613 statutes and judgments. And the reason why I say 611, because 2 of them are 10 commandments, part of the 10 commandments. So Moses' law, the difference between the 10 commandments were given to Moses. 10 commandments are the laws that you are used to govern your life wherever. Okay, wherever you may be, these are 10 commandments. Thou shalt not kill, have no other God before you. It doesn't matter where you are. Okay. However, with the laws of Moses, they were statutes and judgments for inside the promised land. Okay, y'all with me? They were only for what? The promised land, because the land was what? Because the land was holy. When Jesus said in Matthew 5:17, think not that I am come to destroy the law or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill. He's talking about fulfilling the law of Moses. Okay? Because he cannot, when you think about thou shalt not kill, there's nothing to fulfill with that except not to kill. So he didn't come to fulfill that. He came to fulfill these statutes and judgments. Because let me expound on this a little bit more. The statutes and judgments inside the promised land. The land was holy. It was about clean and unclean. You couldn't eat pork. You couldn't eat shellfish. You couldn't do all of these things. If you caught somebody in adultery, they had to be stoned. Statute judgments. You see? Okay? There was judgment for their actions. You understand? Please understand that. So that's the difference between the 2 laws, because what I find is most people in the church, do not understand that there is a difference between the Ten Commandments and the law of Moses, and they make it be one law. It is not one law. There are two separate laws that it is referring to. You need to have an understanding of which law it means. Okay? All right. What were God's people promised?
Land.
They was promised land. God's people were promised what? Land. We've gone from Abraham to Isaac and now to Jacob in Genesis 28 and 13, which says, and behold, the Lord stood above it and said, I am the Lord God of Abraham thy father, and the God of Isaac. The land whereon thou liest, to thee will I give it, and to thy seed. So it was all about the land. Okay? All right? It was all about the land. Now, we need to understand the 12 tribes of Israel. And Israel is the changed name of Jacob, who we just talked about in Genesis 28. Jacob, after he had his encounter with God, God changed his name to Israel. His 12 sons were Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Zebulun, Issachar, Dan, Gad, Asher, Naphtali, Joseph, and Benjamin. Okay? Now, those are the 12 sons. However, when it came to dividing the land, Joseph did not receive land. Okay? And for Joseph, if you know the story of Joseph, Joseph's two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, received the blessing of Jacob, of Israel, right? And so that adds two tribes or two sons to the equation. So Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Zebulun, Issachar, Dan, Gad, Asher, Naphtali, Joseph, and Benjamin. But we're going to add Ephraim and Manasseh. Okay? Now we're going to remove Joseph, which now we go from 14, we're down to 13. We're going to remove Joseph because Joseph didn't receive land. His two sons got it. Then we're going to remove Levi because Levi did not receive land either. So now we're back down to 12. So the 12 tribes are going to be Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Zebulun, Issachar, Dan, Gad, Asher, Naphtali, Benjamin, Ephraim, and Manasseh. Those are going to be the 12 tribes when it comes to dividing up the land. Okay? We're not going to include Joseph, and we're not going to include Levi. Okay? So now let's talk about Levi. Why did Levi not receive land? What was the purpose of this? Deuteronomy 10, 8, and 9 gives us that answer. At that time, the Lord separated the tribe of Levi to bear the ark of the covenant of the Lord, to stand before the Lord, to minister unto him, and to bless his name unto this day. Now pay attention. Verse 9 says, wherefore Levi had no part nor inheritance with his brothers, with his brethren. The Lord is his inheritance, according as the Lord thy God promised him. So this is saying that, okay, Levi did not receive land because God became his inheritance. Their inheritance became the other 11. I mean, the 12 tribes, their inheritance became the land that was promised. But Levi's inheritance was God. So Levi's job was to take care of the things of God, the tabernacle. Okay, that was Levi's role. Okay, and now, and as a result of Levi being obedient to God and taking care of the house of God, watch what happens. Let's go to Numbers 18 and 26. Thus speak unto the Levites and say unto them, when ye take of the children of Israel the tithes, what are they taking? What are the Levites taking? The tithes which I have given you from them for your inheritance. So Levi was receiving what? The tithes from Israel, and that for the purpose of what? His inheritance. what are the types of tithes? Because remember, when we looked at the word tithing, when we look at the word tithes, when we looked at the meaning of it, it just said a tenth part. It never said what it was. It just said what? A tenth part. So now let's go through and see what were the types of tithes. Okay, because there were different types. Matter of fact, before we understand what was included to make up a tithe, let's find out the types of tithe. Okay, that's a better way of putting it. Okay, first of all, there was the yearly tithe. Okay, there was the yearly tithe, which is listed in Leviticus 27 and 30. Okay, and all the land and all the tithe of the land, whether of the seed of the land or of the fruit of the tree, is the Lord's. It is holy unto the Lord's. Okay, all the tithe of the land, whether of the seed. Now, this is not talking about money. This is talking about the seed of the land or the fruit of the trees. Okay, because we're talking about agriculture here. Okay, please understand that. It is holy unto the Lord. The tithe was considered holy unto the Lord. Okay, and so whose inheritance was the Lord's? Levites. Okay, all right. Then there was the festival tithe. So we had the yearly tithe, then we had the festival tithe. The festival tithe is found in Deuteronomy 14, beginning at verse 22. Thou shalt truly tithe all the increase of thy seed. Deuteronomy 14 and 22. Thou shalt truly tithe all the increase of thy seed, that the field bring it forth year by year. We're still talking about the land. We are not talking about money, people. Understand this. Okay? Mm-hmm. All right? Thou shalt truly tithe all the increase of thy seed, that the field bring it forth year by year. 23, and thou shalt eat before the Lord thy God in the place which he shall choose to place his name there. Now watch this. The tithe of corn, of wine, of thine oil, and the firstlings of the herds and the flocks, that thou mayest learn to fear the Lord thy God always. Okay? Y'all seeing this? So we're seeing that they begin to explain what the tithes are, what's going to make up the tithe. Okay? And thou shalt eat before the Lord thy God in the place where he shall choose to place his name. Now, the place where he shall choose to place his name. Now, you have to understand that in this time, there was no permanent place. There was no permanent place for worship. Okay? So wherever God said, wherever the Ark of the Covenant was where they would worship. Okay, so and it says the tithe of thy corn, of thy wine, and thine oil, and the firstlings of the herds and of the flocks, that thou mayest learn to fear the Lord thy God always. Okay, and watch this, verse 24. And if the way be too long for thee, so that thou art not able to carry it, or if the place be too far from thee, which the Lord thy God shall choose to set his name there, when the Lord thy God has blessed thee, verse 25 says, watch this, then thou shalt turn it into money. Thou shalt turn it into money, and bind up the money in thine hand, and thou shalt go unto the place which the Lord thy God shall choose. Okay, so now let me ask you this question. Did Israel have money? Yes. Did Israel have money? That answer is yes, because it just told you. It just told you that, okay, that if the place where the Ark of the Covenant is too far away for you to bring your corn, your wine, your oil, and the herds and the flocks, then you need to convert your tithe into money and bring it with you. Are y'all understanding this? Okay? And watch this. Verse 26. And thou shalt bestow that money for whatsoever thy soul lusted after. So it's saying that now when you get, because what tithe are we talking about? We're talking about the festival tithe here. When you get to the festival, the place for the festival, it's saying that now you are to take your money and you're going to buy whatever you want to buy. after the oxen, or for sheep, or for wine, or for strong drink, or for whatsoever thy soul desireth. And thou shalt eat there before the Lord thy God, and thou shalt rejoice, thou and thine household. And once again, 27 says, and the Levite that is within thy gate, thou shalt not forsake him, for he had no part nor inheritance with thee. Because remember, Levi didn't have land. It's going to keep on reminding you to not forget Levi.
Right.
So even though now for the festival tithe, they're not actually paying the tithe to Levi, Levi is going to enjoy that tithe with you. That's what this is saying. So far we've covered the yearly tithe, we covered the festival tithe, and now we're on the third year tithe. Deuteronomy 14, 28 and 29. At the end of 3 years, thou shalt bring forth all the tithe of thine increase the same year, and shall lay it up within thy gates. 29. And the Levite, once again a reminder, because he had no part nor inheritance with thee, and the stranger, and the fatherless, and the widow, which are within thy gates, shall come and shall eat and be satisfied, that the Lord thy God may bless thee in all the work of thine hand, which thou doest. Now, within thy gates is referring to their jurisdiction in like their neighborhood, I guess would be a way of saying it. Okay. Now, it's important to know that the third year tithe happens in the third year and also in the 6th year. Okay, the third year tithe. But once again, we're seeing that with this tithe, that they were consuming it themselves. You see what I'm saying? And it's telling them, don't forget Levi. He don't have inheritance, but also pay attention, because now it's saying, and the stranger, and the fatherless, and the widow. Now, let me give you something. It said that they shall come and be satisfied. Let me explain something to you. Also something to blow your mind. The poor people did not pay tithes. I want you to understand that. The poor people did not pay tithes. You see, tithe. So we start with the yearly tithe, the festival tithe, the third year tithe, and now we're on the tithe of tithe. Now, the tithe of tithes was the Levitical tithe. This was for the Levites. Numbers 18, 26 through 28. Thus speak unto the Levites. So who are we talking to? The Levites, who receive the tithes, right? Thus speak unto the Levites, and say unto them, when ye take of the children of Israel the tithes which I have given you from them for your inheritance. So when you receive the tithes from the children of Israel, then ye shall offer up a heave offering of it for the Lord, even a 10th part of the tithe. So what's happening here is, when Levi received the tithe from Israel, then they was to take a 10th part of that, and they was to turn around and pay the tithe, the Levitical tithe, to the priests. Okay? So the Levites are going to take a 10th part of the tithe that they received from Israel off the land, and they're going to pay a 10th of that to the priests. It's called the tithe of tithes. Okay? And who was the tithe of tithe referring to? The Levites. This was the tithe that the Levites had to participate in. Okay? Now, let's go to the final year of tithe. But in the 7th year shall be a Sabbath of rest unto the land, a Sabbath for the Lord. Who is the Sabbath for? For the Lord. Okay? Thou shalt neither sow thy field nor prune thy vineyard. Okay? So in the 7th year, there was no tithing. Please understand it. So we're covering the type of tithes. We've covered what a tithe is. Tithe means a 10th part. Okay, we've understand the breakdown of the land of Israel, and see that because of the land was promised to God's people. Because of the land, and the land being holy, is why the tithe came from the land. Okay, because the land was holy, and they were to take their tithes and pay it to the Levites, because the Levites didn't get a portion of land. Okay, and for him taking care of the house of God, he received the tithes from Israel. Okay, Levites. So you only paid tithes to who? To the Levites. You only paid tithes to the Levites. That's it. Clear. Let's talk about the things that were required for the 10th part to be taken from. Okay. So we've already read in scripture that we saw corn, wine, oil, herds. We saw flocks. Okay. Leviticus 27 verse 30 says, and all the tithe of the land, whether of the seed of the land or the fruit of the tree, is the Lord. It is holy unto the Lord. 2 Chronicles 31 verse 5 tells us that as soon as the commandment came abroad, the children of Israel brought in abundance the first fruits. This is the tithe. The first fruits, okay, of corn, wine, oil, and honey, and all of the increase of the field. And the tithe of all things they brought in abundantly. Increase of the what? The field. So we're still talking about the land. Nehemiah 10 and 37 says, and that we should bring the first fruits of our dough and our offerings, and the fruit of all manner of trees, of wine and of oil unto the priests, to the chambers of the house of God, and the tithes of our ground unto the Levites. The same Levites might have the tithes in all the cities of our tillage. Okay. Now let me say this. Jesus made a reference to tithe in the New Testament. Okay. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For ye pay tithe of mint and anise and cumin, and have omitted the weightier matters of the law, judgment, mercy, and faith. These ought ye have done, and not to leave the others undone. So what is this talking about? Mercy we're talking about here is the readiness to help those that are in trouble, that are in need. And faith was the character that a person could rely on. Because you have to understand that the Pharisees were hypocrites. Mm-hmm. They thought it was all about them. So they putting on a show. Yeah, you keeping the law. But God is saying, what Christ is saying, there is something more important. Now I want you to think about that for a second. Because the way church is now, we've been taught that what? You give your tithes off the top to the Lord. You ain't got enough for your bill, pay your tithes.
And have enough faith that he's going to.
And have enough faith that God is going to make a way. Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying? However, in the Bible, that's not the way it was. It's not biblical. Okay? So he's telling them, because you have to understand, what has God always been concerned with? The heart. All the scriptures that we've read so far was that tithing referred to agriculture. It referred to the fruit, to the trees, to the livestock, dough, wine, herbs, spice, and oil. Never do we see silver, gold, or money. Now, it is important, before we start with Malachi 3, it's important to have knowledge of what had taken place going into Malachi 3. So let me give you that information, okay? Israel had been involved with the Gentiles, okay? They had married the Gentiles. They have gotten away from God. They was practicing idolatry, because you have to understand that too. Now Israel has split. We have a northern kingdom and a southern kingdom. Okay, you got Israel and you have Judah. So they're split because of their disobedience. Okay, they're marrying the outsiders. Everything that God told them not to do, they have been doing. Okay, and also now, since they're dealing with the outsiders, that means that they're no longer tithing. They're no longer making offerings to God. So where does that leave the priests? So now, since the priests don't have anything coming in, they don't have food to eat with, and their family don't have food, they can't take care of the house of God. Guess what the priesthood had to do? They had to go out and start doing other things. Nehemiah 13, beginning at 10, says, I also learned that the temple musicians and other Levites had left Jerusalem and gone back to their farms, because the people had not been given them enough to live on. Let's go to Malachi 3. Now we're understanding that they are returning. Israel is returning to God. Verse 3 says, and he shall sit as a refiner and purifier of silver, and he shall purify the sons of Levi and purge them as gold and silver, that they may offer unto the Lord an offering in righteousness. Verse 4, then shall the offering of Judah and Jerusalem be pleasant unto the Lord, as in the days of old, as in former years. And I will come near to you to judgment. It's conditional. After all of this is done, then I will come near to you to judgment, and I will be a swift witness against the sorcerers and against the adulterers and against false swearers and against those that oppress the hirelings in his wages, the widow, the fatherless, that turn aside the stranger from his right, and fear not me, said the Lord of hosts. You see? So now when you come back to me, then I'm going to avenge everyone that has wronged you. Okay, only when you come back. See, and let me say this, because here's how God operates. The benefits of God are conditional. What are they conditioned on? Us being obedient to what God said. Because once you are obedient to him, then you reap the benefits. If you're not obedient to him, you never reap the benefits. Malachi 3 and 6. Now here, this is where it gets interesting. And now since you have all of these meaning of these words that are presented here, let's plug them in and make sense of this. For I am the Lord, I change not. Therefore, ye sons of Jacob are not consumed. So God is saying that I have not changed from day one. Guess who changed? You've changed. Okay? But I made sure that you weren't consumed. But guess what? You done went through some hell because of your disobedience. Verse 7 says, even from the days of your fathers, ye are gone away from mine ordinances. Or remember those statutes and judgments, those ordinances are what? Under the land of, therefore the land, this is the law of Moses. So you've gotten away from my statutes and judgments. And tithing was under one of those statutes, right? And have not kept them. Watch this. Return unto me. So this means that in order for you to return, you have to be away. So God is saying, return unto me, and I will return unto you. Even from the days of your fathers, ye are gone away from mine ordinances, and had not kept them. Return unto me, and I will return unto you, said the Lord of hosts. But ye said, wherein shall we return? So they're saying that we ain't left you. Will a man rob God? Yet ye have robbed me. But ye say, wherein have we robbed thee? So they're saying, God is saying, you're robbing me. And Israel was saying, how are we robbing you? And he says, in tithes and offerings. Okay, so let's pause there. Let's break down some of these words. What does it mean to rob God? Rob is the Hebrew word kavah. Kavah. And it means to defraud or spoil. That's what it means. It means to doubt. It means to doubt. You're saying that God is not who he say he is. Let me break this down for you. If God said everything that you need, I need you to pray to me for it. Okay, you lost your job. God is saying, pray to me and I'll meet your need. I'll supply your need. If you lose your job and you say, you know what, I'm gonna have to hit a lick or something. I'm gonna go out and commit a robbery. You're saying that God is not who he is.
Who he said he is, yes.
You're saying that God is not who he say he is, because he's saying that I'll meet all of your needs. So if you're saying that I got to take matters into my own hand, you're saying that I can't trust God to do it. God can't do this. I got to do it. So this is what God was saying here. You have robbed me in tithes and offerings, because remember, as long as they were paying the tithes and offerings, everybody was taken care of. But they got away from that system, and now nobody is being taken care of. And then he says, ye are cursed with a curse, for ye have robbed me, even as whole nations. So what is this talking about? You're cursed with a curse. If they would have just remain faithful to God, if they just remain obedient to God, everything was taken care of. Ye are cursed with a curse, 3 and 9. For ye have robbed me. Why are you cursed? Because you robbed me. Because you gotten away from what I said. That's why you're cursed. And this goes back to those curses of disobedience that's listed in Deuteronomy and also in Leviticus. Verse 10 says, bring ye all the tithes into the storehouse, all right, that there may be meat in mine house, and prove me now herewith, saith the Lord of hosts, if I will not open you the windows of heaven and pour you out a blessing, that there shall not be room enough to receive. Once again, we have some words here that we need to understand. The storehouse. The storehouse is the treasure house of corn, food, provision. The storehouse is the treasure house for corn, food, and provision. I'm going to say that again. The storehouse is the treasure house for corn, food, and provision. Okay? And when we see meat, that there may be meat in mine house, guess what meat means? Food. Food. That there may be meat in mine house. That there may be food in my house. And prove me now. Trust me again. That's what God is saying. Trust me again. And I'm going to do what I said. Because if you think about it, he was already doing what he said before. In verse 11 says, and I will rebuke the devourer for your sakes. And see, we devour there means, let's stop right there with devour. Something that destroys the fruits of the ground. We are still talking about agriculture, people. Now, yeah, the devil is referred to as a devourer, but not here. Not here. This is talking about devouring the fruits of the ground. And he shall not destroy the fruits of your ground. We are still talking about agriculture, people. He will not destroy the fruits of your ground. Okay? Neither shall your vine cast her fruit before the time in the field. Because see, we ain't got to read this part in church because this is going to mess something up. This ain't going with money. Because casting your vine before her fruit, before the time in the field, means that if the vine casts the fruit before time, that means that it's unfit to eat. Right. You can't eat it because it has not developed. It's not ripe. You can't eat it before it's ripe. So God is saying, trust me, I'm going to make sure everything comes when it's supposed to come. And then it's going to be enjoyable and it's going to be effective. It's going to be beneficial. See, that's what God is saying. And I will rebuke the devourer for your sake. He will not destroy the fruits of your ground. Neither shall your vine cast her fruit before the time in the field, saith the Lord of hosts. You see? And all nations shall call you blessed, for ye shall be a delightsome land, saith the Lord of hosts. If they would have just remain faithful to God, if they just remain obedient to God, everything was taken care of. Because God told them that I'm going to make sure your vines, I'm going to make sure your fruits, the crops come in. Why is God going to make sure the crops come in? Because guess what? Levi is dependent on them crops. So I got to make sure my inheritance is fulfilled, right, because he's taking care of your spiritual needs. So for the sake of the righteous, I got to make sure that the unrighteous per se are benefiting.
Rain on the just as well as the unjust.
That's right. Rain falls on the just as well as the unjust. That's what God is saying. Okay. So what we understand, let me give you a recap once again. Tithing referred to agriculture, fruit, trees, livestock, dough, wine, herbs, spices, and oils. Is there still a Levitical priesthood? Matthew 27, 50 and 51. 50 says, Jesus, when he cried again with a loud voice, yielded up the ghost. And behold, the veil of the temple was rent in twain from the top to the bottom. And the earth did quake and the rocks rent. So what this is saying is talking about a veil that was torn from top to bottom. Let me explain this veil to you people. The veil was the divider from the outside to the inside to the holiest of holies. Now, only the priest could go into the holiest of holies once a year. And he had to go in with a sacrifice for the sins of the people, because that represented the presence of God. So there was a veil, a partition, a wall, a curtain that divided those two places. You couldn't go beyond the veil. Not anybody could go beyond the veil into the presence of God in the Old Testament. So when Jesus was crucified, Matthew 27:51, it tells you that the veil of the temple was rent in two pieces from top to bottom. What this is saying is now there's no longer a partition that separates the outer from the inner. There's no longer a barrier to keep you from entering into the presence of God. Y'all understand that? So since there is no longer a barrier to keep you from entering into the presence of God, that means that when we back up the priests and the Levites who took care of the temple, then the priests who were the ones that went into the holies of holies, he no longer has a job because now Christ in that moment, he became our great high priest. This is why we pray to God in the name of Christ, because Christ became our great high priest. Understand that. No longer do we need to go to any man who needs to go to God on our behalf. No, this was destroyed in Matthew 27:51. That's what took place. And so once again, this is why we go back to that, to Matthew 5:17, when Jesus said, think not that I am come to destroy the law or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill. Because now I fulfilled this. I have ended this. I have completed these statutes and judgments.